Welcome back to The Deep Dive. It is good to have you with us. Today we are looking at something that I think is going to resonate with a massive chunk of our listeners. It's that feeling of frustration.
Frustration is maybe a mild way to put it. For a lot of people, it's an absolute wall.
It really is, isn't it? I'm talking about that specific, almost paralyzing disconnect between understanding a language and then actually being able to speak it. You know the feeling, right?
Oh.
If you're watching a movie in English, you're nodding along, you get the jokes, you understand the nuance, you can read a textbook, and all the grammar rules just make perfect sense on the page.
Everything is clicking. Inside your head, you are completely fluent. You've got this, this internal monologue of a poet.
Exactly. Inside your head, you're Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But then you get into a real life situation. Someone asks you a perfectly simple question, and suddenly, just nothing. The bridge between your brain and your mouth just completely collapses.
It's what some call the silent observer effect. And we see this constantly, not just in language learning, but in educational psychology, in corporate training.
You mean people who know the answer but just won't speak up?
Precisely. You have students in a classroom who absolutely know the material, but they'll stare at the table. They won't make eye contact with the teacher. You have professionals in a meeting who have the best idea, the solution to the problem, but they let the moment pass.
Why? Just out of fear.
Because the terror of, say, conjugating a verb incorrectly or using the wrong preposition, it just completely overrides the value of their idea. The risk feels too high.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. And to be clear, we are not doing a grammar lesson. We are not going to be listing irregular verbs or drilling pronunciation charts.
Thank goodness for that. The world has enough of those.
Right. Instead, we're analyzing a really fascinating narrative guide. It's titled, How I Improved My English, A Story and Daily Routine That Changed Everything.
And it's fascinating because it approaches the whole problem differently. It treats language learning not as an academic subject, but as a psychological shift.
That's the key distinction, isn't it?
It really is. The source material anchors all of its advice in the story of one specific person, the protagonist it calls Rahul. And through his journey, his failures and successes, it lays out this tactical, step-by-step routine. It's a system, really.
A system designed to do what, exactly?
To move someone from a place of absolute paralyzing fear to a place of what you could call functional fluency, confidence.
So our mission today is to walk through Rahul's journey. We're going to treat this almost like a case study. We want to understand the why, the root of his fear, and then we'll break down the how, the specifics of his solution.
And the source uses this fantastic phrase to describe the whole approach. A phrase I think really captures the spirit of it.
What's that?
It calls it daily courage.
Daily courage. I love that. It immediately reframes the whole thing.
It does. It implies that speaking a new language isn't just about intellect or memory. It's about bravery. It redefines the struggle from being like an IQ test to being more of a character test.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about Rahul, our protagonist.
Yeah.
Because I think his starting point is just painfully relatable for so many people. He wasn't a beginner, was he?
No, not at all. And that's what makes his struggle so interesting and, frankly, so common. The source is very clear about this. Rahul had already done the hard work. He'd learned the basics.
So he had the foundation.
He did. If you wrote him an email, he understood it perfectly. If you spoke to him clearly, one-on-one, he could follow you. His passive vocabulary, so the words he could recognize, was actually quite high.
So the data was in the hard drive, so to speak. It just wasn't accessible.
The data was there. But he suffered from what the source calls mind blanking. And it's a very specific physiological response. It's not that you don't know the word. It's that under pressure, your brain prioritizes survival over recall. Your fight or flight response kicks in. And unfortunately, for all of us, speak eloquent English is not a survival priority for the lizard brain.
And for Rahul, this all came to a head in what has to be the most high-stakes, pressurized environment for communication. A job interview.
The classic pressure cooker. There's nowhere to hide.
You can just picture it. He's sitting there, probably wearing a suit he's not totally comfortable in. His palms are sweating. And the interviewer leans forward and asks him the question, the softball question. The one you are supposed to hit out of the park every single time.
Tell me about yourself.
It should be the easiest question in the world. You are the world's leading expert on yourself. You know your own story.
Theoretically, yes. And in his mind, Rahul knew his life story. He knew his qualifications, his projects. But the source describes his physical reaction in this really visceral detail. It says his lips literally froze. His heart started hammering against his ribs. He had the thoughts, he wanted to talk about his degree, his past work, but he physically could not vocalize them. The connection was just severed.
That is the frozen lips moment. It is an absolute nightmare scenario. It's like that dream where you're trying to scream, but no sound comes out.
It is. And of course, he bombed the interview. How could he not? Silence in that context is interpreted as incompetence. But what's really interesting is what happened after.
Right, because usually this is the part where people just give up. They walk away and say, well, I guess I'm just not good at languages, or I don't have the gene for it.
Exactly. They internalize it as a permanent flaw in their character or their intellect. But Rahul had a completely different realization. The source describes it as this moment of almost existential clarity.
What was it?
He realized that the interview didn't fail because he wasn't smart. It failed because his intelligence was trapped. It was locked away where no one could see it.
There's a line in the text that really stuck with me. He thinks to himself, if I don't improve my English, my knowledge will never reach the world.
That is the crux of the entire deep dive right there, that one sentence.
Yeah.
You can be the smartest person in the room. You can be a brilliant engineer, a creative artist, a strategic thinker.
But if the channel of communication is blocked by fear,
then that intelligence is effectively invisible. It just doesn't exist to the outside world.
wow, that's a really heavy realization. It raises the stakes so much it stops being about learning English and starts being about unlocking your potential as a human being.
It's everything. And this led Rahul to make a critical philosophical distinction. He stopped viewing his ability in English as a measure of his intelligence and started viewing it purely as a skill.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. That sounds like a subtle difference in wording, but I have a feeling it's huge. What is the actual practical difference between viewing language as intelligence versus viewing it as a skill?
It changes everything about how you process failure. You believe that language ability is a measure of intelligence. The idea that smart people speak good English and stupid people speak bad English. Then every single mistake you make is an attack on your ego.
A personal failing.
Yes. Every time you use the wrong tense, you are telling yourself, on some level, I am stupid. And what does that do?
It makes you terrified to speak. Of course, you're trying to protect your self-image. You'd rather stay silent and look mysterious than open your mouth and risk looking dumb.
Precisely. You start asking yourself these fear-based questions like, will people laugh at me? Or will they think I'm uneducated? But if you reframe it as a skill, just like learning to drive a car or play tennis or write code, then mistakes aren't character flaws anymore. They're just data points.
Right. If I stall a car when I'm learning to drive, I don't think I am a fundamentally bad person. I just think, oops, I let the clutch out too fast.
Exactly. Or if you hit a tennis ball into the net, you don't have an existential crisis about your self-worth. Just think, okay, next time adjust my racket angle. It depersonalizes the error.
So Rahul switched his internal question.
He switched from the fear-based question, will they laugh at me, to a growth-based question, how can I improve daily? That single mindset shift turned the terror into a project. It took all the emotion out of the failure and replaced it with simple mechanics.
And that brings us to the mechanics. Because he didn't just sit around and meditate on this new mindset. He built a system around it, a very specific routine.
He built a routine. And I want to emphasize for everyone listening, this was not some quit your job and move to London fancy routine. It was designed to be built into a normal, busy life. It's broken down into these manageable blocks, morning, daytime, and night.
Okay, let's dissect this because I know people love a good actionable protocol. Let's start with the morning block. The source says this is about 20 to 30 minutes in total.
That's right. It's designed to be done before the chaos of the day can take over. It's all about priming the brain for the day ahead.
And step one is immersion. Specifically, 10 minutes of English listening. What was he listening to? Podcasts? News?
The source lists a few things, podcasts, stories, motivational videos, but the content actually matters less than the attitude towards it. There's a key constraint here that I think is just brilliant.
And what's that?
It didn't matter if you didn't understand everything.
See, that right there is where I think most people get stuck. I know I do. If I'm listening to a language I'm learning and I miss a word, my brain just freezes. I stop listening to the rest of the sentence because I'm stuck trying to figure out that one word I missed.
That's the analytical brain trying to take a test. You're trying to score 100% on a comprehension exam. Rahul was instructed to treat this listening time more like a warm bath. He was just immersing himself.
Not trying to analyze it.
No. The goal wasn't active dissection or mental translation. It was about building a sense of natural English in his brain. He was letting the rhythm, the cadence, the intonation, the whole flow of the language just wash over him.
So it's less about vocabulary and more about just tuning your ear to the music of the language.
It's about pattern recognition. Your brain is a phenomenal pattern matching machine. If you feed it enough input, even if you don't consciously understand every single bit of it, it starts to recognize the musicality. It starts to anticipate where a sentence is going. You stop hearing noise and you start hearing structure.
Okay, so he's had his 10-minute audio bath. He's primed. What's step 2 of the morning routine?
Step 2 is reading aloud for 5 to 10 minutes.
And the source is really specific here. It has to be out loud, not just reading silently in your head.
This part is non-negotiable in the system.
Why, though? What is the functional difference? I mean, I can read a book way faster silently. Isn't the goal to get through the material?
Speed isn't the goal here. Connection is. It's about building the physical bridge. When you read silently, your brain recognizes the word, but your mouth doesn't have to do any of the work. You can easily skip over difficult pronunciations. You can glaze over the rhythm.
I see. You're not actually producing anything.
Right. But when you read aloud, you are forcing the muscles of your mouth, your tongue, your jaw, to actually form the physical shapes of the language. You're connecting the visual word on the page to the physical action of speaking.
It's like gym class for your mouth.
It is. It's pure muscle memory. There's a huge disconnect for many learners where they know what a word sounds like in their head, but their mouth has never physically produced that sound before. This exercise bridges that gap.
And I guess it also helps you get used to the sound of your own voice speaking English.
Which is a surprisingly big psychological hurdle for a lot of people. Hearing yourself speak a foreign language can feel awkward, even embarrassing at first. This normalizes it.
That makes a lot of sense. You're closing that gap between the mental image of speaking and the physical reality of it. Okay, so on to step 3 of the morning. This is the one that sounded the most interesting to me. Mirror speaking.
The mirror method. This is what Rahul considered his secret weapon.
So he is literally standing in front of a mirror and talking to himself. For real.
For 5 minutes. Every single morning. No exceptions.
And what on earth is he talking about? Is he reciting poetry, giving a big speech to his reflection?
Anything and everything. The source suggests simple things. Planning out the day ahead, recounting something interesting that happened yesterday, even just predicting how a meeting might go. But again, the topic is completely secondary to the real point.
And the real point is?
The safety net.
Explain the safety net.
Think about the root cause of the fear we discussed. Why are people so afraid to speak? It's judgment. It's the other person's reaction. It's the raised eyebrow, the confused look, the impatience.
The social pressure.
Right. The mirror method completely removes the audience. There is no one there to judge you. There's no grammar police to correct you. There's no one to get impatient.
It's a completely zero judgment zone.
Exactly. It allows you to practice the pure act of retrieving words from your brain and speaking them out loud without the cortisol spike of social anxiety. You are simply proving to yourself, day after day, that you can form sentences. You're desensitizing yourself to the physical act of speaking English.
I like that framing. It's like a flight simulator for conversation. You get to practice before you fly the real plane.
That is a perfect analogy. You can crash and burn in the simulator and it's fine. No consequences.
So you stutter in the mirror so you don't stutter in the meeting.
You work out the kinks. You hear yourself stumble over a word, you pause, you correct it, and you move on. And nobody saw it happen.
Yeah.
It builds this quiet, foundational confidence.
Okay, so that's the morning. He's primed his brain with listening, he's warmed up his mouth with reading aloud, and he's practiced the act of speaking in the simulator. Now he heads out into the actual day. And this is where the source identifies what it calls the real enemy of fluency.
The translation habit.
Oh, I know this struggle intimately. You see a table. Your brain first thinks of the word for table in your native language. Then you have to mentally open a dictionary, find the English word table, and only then can you speak it.
It's a massive, unnecessary cognitive load. It's like running an old emulation software on a new computer. It just slows everything down. That split-second delay is what creates the stuttering, the hesitation, the ums, and the
And that kills your confidence because you feel slow. You feel like you're always 3 seconds behind the actual conversation.
Exactly. So how did Rahul break this?
Yeah.
Because that feels like a deeply, deeply ingrained habit. You can't just wish that away overnight.
What did he do?
No, you have to actively train it away. And he used what the source calls micro-habits throughout the day. This is key. He wasn't sitting down to study. He was just living his life. But he changed his internal monologue. The first technique was simple. naming objects.
So he's just walking around pointing at things.
Mentally, yes.
Yeah.
He would be at his desk, look at his coffee cup, and immediately force his brain to think, coffee. Not his native word for it, just coffee.
Yeah.
He would see a bus out the window and think, bus. He was intentionally forging a direct link between the visual object and the English word, completely bypassing his native language.
He's cutting out the middleman.
He's cutting out the middleman.
Yeah,
Exactly. He's rewiring the shortcut keys in his brain. So instead of the old pathway, which was object native word,
Wow.
English word, the new pathway becomes simply object English word.
It seems so trivial, but I can see how doing that hundreds of times a day would start to make a difference.
You are literally reshaping your neural pathways. It becomes automatic. And the source says he took this a step further beyond just single words.
With full sentences, right?
Yes. The next micro habit was framing simple sentences. So instead of thinking these complex, nuanced thoughts in his native language and then facing the impossible task of translating them in real time,
Which never works.
never works, he forces internal narration into simple, direct English sentences.
Can you give an example? What would that sound like?
The examples given in the source are very basic. He'd be walking to the cafeteria and think, I am going to the market. Or sitting at his desk thinking, I need to finish this report. Waiting for the kettle, the water is cold.
That seems, I don't know, almost too simple. Does thinking the water is cold really help you when you need to discuss complex business strategy in a meeting?
It does, because it's changing the fundamental operating system of your brain. Even if the content of the thought is simple, the process of generating an English thought directly is what matters. He is training his brain to think in English by default.
I see. So once you can generate the simple thoughts directly, adding complexity later is much easier.
Infinitely easier. But if you are always stuck in that translation loop, you will never be fluent, no matter how large your vocabulary is. It's about speed and directness.
It's like learning to walk before you run, but making sure you're actually walking on your own 2 feet, not using the crutch of translation.
That's a great way to put it. And the beauty of this whole daytime shift is that it doesn't require any extra time. You don't need to carve out an hour in your calendar. You just narrate your life as it happens.
Okay, so he's done this throughout his workday. He's mentally labeling objects and narrating his actions. He's probably exhausted. He gets home. Now we get to the night routine. This is the cool down phase.
Right. If the morning was about activation and the day was about immersion, the night is all about consolidation and reflection. This is a shorter block, maybe 15 to 20 minutes before sleep.
And the first step before bed is story reading. How is this different from the reading he did in the morning?
The morning reading was about mechanics. It was about pronunciation, the physical act. The night reading is about flow. The source specifically suggests short stories, emotional stories, narratives. It's about enjoying the language, not dissecting it.
So it's passive versus active again, in a way.
Somewhat. It's more about ending the day with a positive, relaxed connection to the language. You aren't drilling flashcards, you're just reading a story. It helps the brain associate English with relaxation and narrative, not just stress and job interviews. It's about, falling in love with the language a little bit.
And then after the reading, there's a self-reflection part.
Yes, self-talk, but it's a very structured self-talk. He would verbally review his day by answering 3 specific questions out loud.
What were they?
First, what did I learn today? Second, what was one mistake I made today? And third, what was one thing I did well today?
I really love the inclusion of the one mistake part. That's powerful.
Why does that one stand out to you so much?
Well, because normally we try to just ignore our mistakes. We feel ashamed. We try to pretend they didn't happen. By forcing yourself to ask, what mistake did I make? Break. You're dragging it out into the light. You're neutralizing it.
It's a brilliant act of metacognition. By acknowledging the mistake verbally, saying out loud, today I used the wrong tense when I spoke to my boss, you take the emotional power away from it. You can analyze it objectively. It stops being this shameful secret and it becomes a simple lesson for tomorrow. It closes the loop on the day.
It's like closing the books on the day's events. You file the mistake away under lesson learned rather than carrying the emotional baggage of it into the next day.
Precisely. And finally, there's a vocabulary strategy in the night routine that I found very counterintuitive at first. The source calls it the 5 words rule.
Yes, this is a rule of constraint. He was only allowed to learn 5 new words a day.
Only 5, no more.
That's so strange to me. I feel like if I'm really motivated, I want to learn 20 or 30 words. I want to feel like I'm making huge progress. I'd want to download the whole dictionary.
And that is exactly why most people fail. It's a classic New Year's resolution effect. You go to the gym for 3 hours on January 1st, and then you can't walk for a week, so you quit.
Right. cramming just leads to burnout.
The source is explicit about this. Do not try to learn 50 words. You won't remember them, you'll get them confused, and you will feel like a failure at the end of the day. But 5 words is sustainable. And just look at the math.
What does it add up to?
5 words a day is 150 words a month. Over a year, that's nearly 2,000 highly useful words.
And a vocabulary of 2,000 words is basically fluency for, what, 90% of all daily conversation?
It is. But here's the key. Because he learned them slowly, and very importantly, he learned them in sentences, not just as a list of definitions. He actually retained them. He owned those 5 words every day.
It's quality over quantity, and it's all about consistency.
And it creates a sense of winning. Every single day, you succeed at your goal of learning 5 words. You don't fail your unrealistic goal of learning 50. That little dopamine hit of success is what keeps you going for the long haul.
So we have this really comprehensive, holistic routine: morning activation, daytime immersion, nighttime reflection, and consolidation. It really is a lifestyle overhaul, even if it's in small pieces. So the big question is, did it actually work?
It did. But what I appreciate is that the source gives us a very realistic timeline. This wasn't a become fluent in 7 days scam. This took time.
What did the progress look like? What were the milestones?
At the 3-month mark, the source says the biggest changes were internal. Rahul noticed almost suddenly that he had stopped translating in his head. That delay, that buffering feeling we talked about, it was just gone.
That is the holy grail right there, actually thinking in the language.
It is. And externally, the fear began to dissipate. He noticed that in conversations, people started listening to him more. Why? Because he wasn't hesitating so much. He wasn't signaling, I am unsure, with his body language and his pauses anymore.
But the real test, the cinematic climax of this entire story, happens at the 6-month mark.
The return. He schedules another job interview.
He's going back to the scene of the crime, facing the ghost of the frozen lips.
Exactly. And I bet you can guess what the very first question from the interviewer was.
It had to be, tell me about yourself.
Of course. It's the perfect bookend. But this time, his reaction was completely different. The source breaks down the details very carefully. First, Rahul smiled.
Okay, that's a good start.
Then, he spoke slowly. He wasn't rushing. He made eye contact. But here's the single most important detail, and if the listener takes away nothing else from our deep dive today, I want them to hear this.
What is it?
He made mistakes.
Wait, really? He wasn't perfect. After 6 months of this intense, dedicated routine,
He was not perfect. The source is clear on this. He maybe missed a preposition here or there. He maybe fumbled a verb tense slightly. But the difference was he kept going. He didn't freeze. The mistakes didn't derail him.
And what was the outcome of the interview?
He got the job.
Boom! The redemption arc is complete.
And the analysis in the source of why he got the job is just so profound. It argues that he wasn't hired for his perfect grammar. He was hired because he was clear and because he was confident.
That is such a huge takeaway for anyone listening. We obsess over grammar. We think we need to sound like a textbook to be taken seriously or to sound professional. But in the real world, clarity and confidence win every single time.
Confidence implies competence. It's a psychological shortcut. If you speak perfectly but you look terrified and unsure, people will doubt you and your ideas. But if you speak with a few small mistakes but you are calm, direct, and assertive, people believe you. The interviewer didn't care about the preposition. They cared that Rahul could communicate his value.
It really reinforces that theme we started with. English is a tool, not an IQ test.
Exactly. And the tool doesn't have to be perfectly polished and shiny. It just has to work. It has to get the job done.
So what does all of this mean for the person listening right now? Maybe they are stuck in that silent observer phase that you described. What is the core actionable message we should be taking away from Rahul's journey?
The source boils it all down to that concept we mentioned at the start, the concept of daily courage.
Daily courage. I like that so much. It sounds less like homework and more like a character trait you're building.
It is. If you're sitting there right now thinking, I can't speak English well enough to start practicing, the source is telling you that you have it completely backwards. You don't get good to start, you start to get good.
The perfectionism is the trap.
It's the whole trap. The requirement isn't perfection. The requirement is just showing up every day.
So it's giving you permission to be bad at it, at least in the beginning.
It is giving you explicit permission. The instruction in the source is literally, speak broken English, speak wrong English, but speak daily.
Because if you speak daily, eventually the broken English becomes better English and then good English. But if you stay silent, waiting for the day you're perfect.
You never speak at all. You stay in that frozen state forever.
That's the choice.
Exactly. It's about changing English from a source of fear, something that controls you and limits you, into a source of strength, a tool that you wield to share your ideas with the world.
This has been such a practical and, honestly, an inspiring deep dive. I feel like we can all take a page out of Rahul's book, whether we're learning a new language or just trying to master any new skill, really.
Absolutely. The principles are completely universal.
So, just to recap the big takeaways for everyone. The first one has to be, consistency beats talent. You don't need to be some kind of linguistic genius. You just need to do the morning routine, even when you don't feel like it.
And, related to that, daily practice beats motivation. Motivation is fickle. It comes and goes. A routine sticks. I guarantee you Rahul didn't feel like talking to the mirror every single day, but he did it anyway. That's what makes the difference.
And finally, let's never forget that initial painful problem. Knowledge without the ability to communicate it is trapped. Don't let your brilliance, your ideas, your personality stay locked inside your head just because you're afraid of a verb tense. The world needs your ideas more than it needs your perfect grammar.
That's it. That is the entire message in a nutshell.
So here is a provocative thought to leave you with. We often think the biggest barrier to speaking a new language is vocabulary or grammar, that we just don't know enough words or rules. But Rahul's story suggests that the biggest barrier, the real wall, is actually the fear of being laughed at.
Which is precisely why the mirror method is so effective. It strategically eliminates the audience. It proves in a very real way that the problem isn't your tongue or your brain, it's your anxiety about other people.
So here's the challenge from the source, directly to you. Try the mirror tomorrow morning, just 5 minutes. See what happens when you remove the fear of judgment from the equation.
Find your voice in the safety of your own room so you can learn to use it out in the world.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. Go practice your daily courage. We'll see you in the next one.
Goodbye, everyone.